So I've decided to paint this telescope array. It's called the 𝗟𝗚 telescope array over in Chile. It actually consists of, I think, over 60 different telescopes, radio telescopes, but I've taken a small part of it and just from a bunch of references, and I thought what I'll do is try to give this one a shot. What I'm thinking is I'm going to make the sky pretty purplish, so purplish and blue, and I'm going to fade that down to the bottom and try to get in a bit of the moon first. So this sketch I actually went through a little earlier with a bit of pencil, and then I just went over with a black pen. Let's get started, and what I'm trying to do firstly is just to preserve a bit of the sky here for the moon, and for that I'm just gonna look at the paper from an angle and just see if I can get in, just paint around an area like that, and I might actually get in some blue too, so that I can just see the area like that. Okay. So that looks fine, and I might be sniffling a little bit during this video. I've got some hay fever and haven't taken any tablets. It's hay fever season now in Melbourne. So mixing up a bit of purple now. I've actually got a little pan of purple. I'm not sure what it is, but it came with this 𝗪𝗏𝗧𝗏 set. Interesting thing though is that it does look a little bit opaque, and I'm gonna get some ultramarine and just mix some of that in as well, but I want to make sure that it's quite dark up the top. Okay, so let's give that a shot. The paper's flat at this stage, and that looks okay, though I want to make that a bit darker as well. The reason why I'm painting with the paper flat is because later when I add in some more colours, I'm hoping to get some bloom effects and some interesting mixing and things like that. I don't want it to run downwards. So just continuing with this wash. Oops, gone over the line a bit, but no big deal. Let's carry that down. And the paper I'm using, it's not 100% cotton paper, so I'm really interested to see what's going to happen with these washes. You can't go too overboard with them. Let me just cut around this area of the moon like that. Okay, and I'll refine that a bit more later on. And I've picked up, a little bit of that green, I think, on the palette that's left over before. Mainly I just want it to be this purple and blue mix, and I'll add in a bit of water up the top there just to see what it does. I want to imply some clouds coming across the moon. This area is drying a bit weird. Add in some water here. And the trick is when you go back into those areas, you just touch it with a bit of water, shift it around a bit, and just leave it to dry again. Okay, so I'm moving this mix downwards, and I just want to try adding a bit of cerulean, tiny bit of cerulean here. Maybe bit of that green as well, just a little bit. Cut around these telescopes, going down. And, you know, at this stage I've figured that this top area is not quite dark enough, adding in some more blue, and I'm also going to pick up a bit of this sepia, and I'm going to go all across this top section. It needs to be dark enough, especially later on, because I'm planning to put in some stars, so don't be afraid to make it a little bit darker. Watercolours always dries a fair bit lighter than what you anticipate, so really important. And a lot of people, when they paint wet into wet, they do struggle at first because there's a lot of, I guess, lack of control in what's going to happen when you first start out with the technique, because you just, you know, especially with even just painting generally in watercolors, you don't know what it's going to turn out like. But as you keep practicing, you'll figure out the, you know, the amount of water you need to put in to get it to bloom and that sort of thing in a certain way. So carrying that wash further down here. And I wanted that to be smoother actually, but I let that dry. Carried it all the way down. You know, you can bring it even down to the foreground, but I'm just making sure to cut around these areas of the telescopes, preserve that white of the paper, then we can go in and do them later on. There we go. And very crucial that you do fade it to this lighter colour as you go down to the horizon line. Okay. It's looking okay. Now one thing I want to do, it's still not dark enough. Let's add in some more blue down here. While it's all still wet. That. More sepia. Like that. Further down. Cut around this area of the moon again. Be really careful. Just layering more pigment through like that. So even that sort of thing is completely fine. Really want that to spread out nicely. Back into the ultramarine. Some more purple. Bring that down more. So this is why I'd recommend, you know, if you are starting out doing these wet on wet scenes to begin with, if you have get yourself some 100% cotton watercolor paper, it just makes it a lot easier. You don't have to do what I'm doing with this sort of paper. It dries unpredictably at times. cutting around these telescopes again, and I'm just trying to get the values to a dark enough point where I'm happy to proceed onwards. I feel this needs to have a bit more blue in there as well. Like that. And you can keep on, really just keep on going until you're happy with it. And I really enjoy doing wet and wet. Okay. Just thought I would add some more darkness and maybe some blue up in the corner here. That. Okay, that's enough fiddling around for now. Moving down into the foreground. This needs to be pretty dark, but I do want this area slightly illuminated, so I'm going to grab a bit of this pale blue and just go over this little path that I've made. I've added some figures in here just to give a sense of perspective and size of the telescopes as well. So now I'm going to just mix up some blue and purple together and get in this foreground. Just trying to get this to blend with the path here as well while it's still wet. It needs to be darker. I've added in some sepia and just cut around the telescopes and bring that wash up to where those trees are. And we're going to do the trees here as well, but I think later on I'll go and emphasize them a bit more too. And just bring that across. Get that all in one go. Okay, great. Some more blue in here. This is really too watery, this area at the bottom. It's going to dry quite light, but I'm just trying to influence that more by adding in some bits and pieces here. That. Okay. But these mountains and things in the back need to be darkened later on. Let's see if I can get that to blend a bit more, like that. That's better. Leave that sharp edge in the corner there. You know, at this stage, there's little things you can do. You can go in with some clean water and create some cloud-like effects, and it's always unpredictable what's going to happen exactly. So you've got to be brave when you do it. Sometimes it can turn out looking better or worse, but I'll show you what I mean. So I've just got some clean water, and I'll just add in a bit, say here, a bit here, maybe a bit here, that, a bit there, here. One of the good things though about using this paper is it's not cotton, and the colour doesn't soak through 100%, which means that you can lift out and alter things quite easily. It's got this erasability to it, but really don't want to get into that habit of trying to fix things up. Just encouraging this little area down the bottom to blend a bit more. In darker near the foreground, so just adding in, you know, a little bit of extra paint. I like this path, and I'm going to leave that the way it is, but I want to create more contrast by adding in some darker paint above here, like that. Some directional kind of lines going in, like this. And you can see what I mean with these areas that I've gone in with some water. You're getting some interesting kind of bloom effects, and they start to resemble clouds a little. And at this point you can play around with the moon, and you can leave it like that, or you can get some clouds going across. I think I'm just going to leave it like this and try to soften the edges of it just to help it blend more, or hopefully help it blend more with the sky. So just adding some clean water, drying my brush a bit to the edges there, just feathering that out. And what that's doing is getting rid of that really hard edge. You don't have to do it to all the corners, edges. You can just do it to part of whatever you're trying to soften, like that. So I've left this side of it as a hard edge, and this part not so much. And just try to blend this one a bit more, almost to look like a cloud going across. But I think I'll leave that. Alright, so I'm going to try add in some of the darker areas now on the telescope. Just picking up some of this excess paint and going through. The light source is coming from the top right, so we want to make sure that areas of this, the right side of this telescope is illuminated. So I'm going to go ahead and colour this part in darker, but I'm going to leave some of the right side lighter, like this area there and here. darker here. And leave that bit of white. And around there, more blue in there. Let's go through and do this section. Down. Just leave bits of white, especially on this right hand side, and can make that pretty dark at the base. More sepia and ultramarine. Like that. Connect that together. Okay. Darker left hand side there. Just need to emphasize that a bit more. You can still go through and change it later on if you want. I just like to add in paint wet onto wet for the effect, and also for the speed of things, so I don't have to, there's less work I need to do later on. So same thing for this one behind. So just going through like that. It's in the distance, so you don't need to make it too detailed, but just follow that same light pattern so that the right side looks a bit lighter, like that. What I've done there is I've just added in the darker bits on the left, and then use some water, clean water, to join it onto the right hand side. I'll have to go over this whole thing again later. This bit of the background should be darker, like that. Okay, I'll actually just blend that in like that. Let's get this one done. That blue. And a bit darker at the base. Oops. Just get this all in one go. Like that. Okay, and I'll blend this in. It's lighter. Maybe a bit here as well. Like that. The rest of this telescope in. Get it pretty light on these areas. Blending. More wet on wet. This one in the back, I'm just going to colour in almost the same colour. Very dark mix of blue and sepia. Don't want too much attention on that one because it's in the background. But yeah, just keep following that light source to the right. Keep that area on the front. the illuminated. Okay. Really just colouring it in. The base darker. Like that. And you do it with this one as well. It's looking all right for now, and I might give it a quick try. Okay, that's dried off now. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a flat brush, and this is a pretty small flat brush. It's a number 6. Just thinking it's probably too small. I want to get that background in, but I want it to be pretty loose. If you want to use that, if you want to get that loose effect, it's good to use a large brush. So I'm going to mix up a dark mix of ultramarine and sepia, quite thick, almost like the darkness of that cloud up the top. And let's start from the left side. So I'm right-handed, don't want it to smudge, and just get that in, following some of the pen that I've indicated there, like that. Get that all in. Cut around the telescopes, like that. And actually here I made a little mistake with the base of the telescope. I made it too wide, and I'm trying to now go over it in this area just to cover up that little mistake there. Change of plans, swap to the smaller one. It's going to help me get into these tricky areas like that. And we'll go, just add in all of that area in the back, like so. And there's a couple of options. You can soften it, which I think I'll do in some areas, like here. Maybe here. Slightly. I do like how this side's turned out. Okay. And really, the foreground needs to be a little bit darker in some areas, so I'm going to darken that up now. Not in all the areas, just some of it, because I do like this lighter wash. That. Maybe do a bit of this shadow as well, like this. Just indication. Darken the base. Okay. Just a bit darker. Soften. Soften here. Okay. And this side. It's very tricky. I want to preserve this area, but also make the surrounding areas darker. I might have to go over it a little bit, just in a quick wash of this purple, like that. We do this shadow a little, and this one. Okay. Really at this point, you can call it a day, but still a few little things I want to just demonstrate in this. I'll add in the stars later, and I'll show you a cool little technique with a toothbrush. There's little things like that you can add in a bit more detail. Only because I want to make the one nearest just a little bit more detailed, and you can indicate that objects are closer by actually adding more detail, funny enough. With that one there and that one there, I've added very little detail to them. But this one I've just added in a few little darker spots, and that looks decent to me. I will just darken this one more to get the values a bit darker on the left side. Same here. Increase that feeling of light. Moving down to the base, darken that. And we'll do it for this one as well, which is a bit closer. Just some light indications. Okay, I'll make this side darker. And that side. Darken the base. do think this area is a bit too white now. It's detracting, so I'll soften that a bit. Okay, better. Darken this behind like that. Very loose with my brush strokes with this one in the distance. Okay, I'm going to go and do the sky now, just to get the stars in. I'll show you a little trick. Let's grab some gouache, and I'm actually going to squeeze it out on another palette, because once it dries on my main palette, it's very difficult to get rid of it. This is another one that I've got. Bit of white gouache like that, and I've got a toothbrush, but you can actually use a normal brush and just flick it onto the paper. I'll show you what I mean later. So I need a bit more like that. Almost pure white gouache, but there needs to be some water in there. Okay, that looks about right. Now what I'm going to do, cover the area that you don't want to get splattered on, and just do this. Oops. Bit too much there. See if I can mop that up. And that'll just create a bit of a starry night effect. And I'll show you what I mean with the paintbrush. You would probably do better with a rigger or so. Let me just grab one of those actually. And a small brush like this. Just grab that gouache and just flick it onto the paper like that. Takes a bit longer, but you can get a similar effect. But if you've got an old toothbrush, this will work quite well. Okay, now that the messy stuff's over, bits of gouache all over my desk now. So now that the messy part's over, I'm just going to finish off and do these little figures and simply paint them in darker. So grabbing a small brush and just picking up some darker paint. Doesn't matter what it is. Let's get them in. Like that. You can even do a little bit of a shadow going in this direction. Like this. And you're done.